It's a new day, and this calls for a new tournament. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Heavy Metal Tournament, Hot Wheels vs. Matchbox. Our first group of the whole thing is a Mustang, a BMW, a Corvette, and actually another Mustang. Now, I don't know about you, but if I had a dream car, it definitely would be a Mustang. So let us know in the comments what your dream car is. And also, we do like to point out that we like to see predictions made on who you think is going to win. And your comment may very well be highlighted at the end of the tournament if your prediction is correct. For now though, let's take a look at these racers. Right now the two Mustangs are out in front, and it's the gray one that finishes in first with a 13.55. We'll see how that stacks up to more times as the tournament progresses. What you may notice is two things. You may notice that the track has no points in which they will really collide with each other unless one of them somehow derails and jumps over to another lane. And you'll also notice that the timer at the end of the track doesn't have an overarching structure, which may help later on if we have any more close calls like we had in previous tournaments. Right now the four racers are staying together, but the two Mustangs are starting to pull out in front, starting to pull away here, and the gray Mustang is still in the lead, having that tighter turn there, but they do have that steep climb at the end, which I am sure is going to change a lot of racers' positions in the future. They do still get the win though, this time finishing with a 13.41. Currently the gray Mustang has the fastest time, but we're just getting started. I wouldn't be surprised if we have racers that break the 13-second mark. As of this moment though, that gray Mustang, if they get one more win, they will automatically move on to the finals in today's races. And there'll be one race after that from getting a sweep. It's somehow, I don't know what's going on with that Corvette, but they also seem to really just lose so much speed right off the bat, and they don't have much of a way to catch up at all. I don't think it's the way that the car is designed. I think it's just that driver may not be very good. Maybe they just don't have a lot of experience yet. But those two Mustangs do finish around the same time with a 13.43, but I think the yellow one took the win this time, denying the gray Mustang a sweep of their own. If we had managed to get a sweep right at the beginning of the tournament, that would have been very impressive. But we get into this last race now. It's still looking really good for both Mustangs, because the BMW and the Corvette, they just seem to trail behind most of the time, the Corvette especially. And look at these two, they're staying relatively close together, leaving the other two racers in the dust. But look at that, as I say that, the BMW is actually catching up, keeping up with the yellow Mustang as they get into these last couple of turns. Can they get second place? They do have that wide turn, and no, they lose so much speed. That steep climb is going to be a massive game changer, I can tell already. But the two Mustangs will be moving on, and the gray Mustang did finish in first again, but they did not get the sweep. They'll have another chance when we get to the finals. But it'll be the yellow and gray Mustang moving on. Let's see who will join them in the second group. We've got a Mercedes, a Buick, a Mercury, and a Blue Shark. Now, I don't know what's going on with that Mercury, but the face on the side of that thing is a little creepy. I don't know what that is or what that represents. Maybe it's a reference to something that I don't know about, but it's giving me the chills. And we may be seeing more of it in this tournament, because right now it's already got a decent sized lead with only one car staying relatively close to them. But they do finish in first with a 13.28. I think that's the fastest time we've had so far. And the other three are staying relatively close behind them, so we may have a little bit more competition, unlike that first group. I do like the design on that Blue Shark though. Second race, here we go. Mercury is out in front immediately, but the Blue Shark, in fact all three racers are staying, or at least trying to stay close behind him. But the Mercury is quickly pulling away. that wide turn did make them lose some speed, but they still have that lead. Yeah, those wide turns are usually a speed killer, but they're managing to hold on to the lead. They do have the tight turn there, and they get another win. They did finish a little bit slower that time, but it could be because of some of those wide turns they had. At this point, it's kind of a fight for second place, because the other three are staying relatively close together, but that Mercury, like with the Mustang, just needs one more win, and they're guaranteed a spot in today's finals. Going to race number 3, excuse me. And the Mercury is out in front. They do have the wide turn. And it's the Buick that has the lead for a second. The Mercedes gets that lead back, and then it's automatically lost after that turn. The Mercury seems to have the best handling out of all 4 of them, because it seems no matter what lane they're in, they manage to either keep the lead or take it back at some point. Finishing with a 13.41 this time, which is around the same time that the Mustangs had earlier. But this car has shown that they can go a little bit faster if they need to. Meanwhile, they do have the first 3 wins, so they automatically move on to the finals. Now it's just a matter of getting a sweep, which seems very likely. In this last race, they're in one of the middle lanes, which could very well be beneficial for them because they're not going to lose too much speed at any point. And the Buick is trying to keep up with them. Going into these last couple of turns, the Buick has a tight turn here, trying to get the lead, is so far unable to. They do have some speed going into that last turn, but it's not going to be enough. And ladies and gentlemen, we already have a sweep. I honestly thought one of the Mustangs was going to be able to earlier, but they couldn't. Meanwhile, the Mercury gets a sweep, and the Mercedes will be joining them in the finals. So let's see if the Mercury can keep this up. The Mercury, the biggest challenge is probably going to be the 2 Mustangs. The Mercedes did move on, but they still didn't do very well overall. Let's see if that comes back to bite them here in the finals. Now, all 4 right now are staying close together. The Mercury was in the back for a second, but that turn allows them to get the lead back. And the gray Mustang is right on his tail. They go into this final stretch. The Mercury is holding on to it, but the Mustang is right behind them. This turn can make all the difference. And the gray Mustang actually does take the win away from the Mercury, keeping them from getting a complete sweep in this entire race day. So it's the gray Mustang that gets the first win, and the Mercury finishes in between the 2 Mustangs. And the Mercedes does finish in last, but maybe they'll still be able to redeem themselves. I do not know yet. We've seen quite a few surprises in previous tournaments, so I'm sure we'll see a handful of them this time. It is the 2 Mustangs along with the Mercury, and the Mercedes is trying to keep up. In fact, here he comes in that lane, keeping up with them, making up some ground, and now he's in second, but the Mercedes are starting to lose that ground, and it's the yellow Mustang that finishes in first this time, whereas the Mercury once again finishes in second. But the gray Mustang finished in third that time, and they're relatively close together in points. In fact, the Mercury has 6, while the other 2 have 7. So it could very well be any one of these 3 racers, whereas the Mercedes, it's unfortunately not looking very good for them. The Mercury and the gray Mercedes are fighting for first place right now, whereas the yellow I'm sorry, did I say Mercedes? I meant the gray Mustang and the Mercury. My apologies. But the yellow Mustang is out in front, but they have that wide turn. Is it going to make a difference? It will. And the gray Mustang finishes in first, finishing with a 13.21. I want to say that's the fastest time we've had so far. But that race right there could make all the difference. The Mercury has been consistent, but he's still behind the gray Mustang in points. If he doesn't finish in front of the gray Mustang here, it could very well be a short-lived victory for the Mercury, who got a sweep in their own group. They do have a decent-sized lead right now. I don't know if they're going to be able to hold on to it. In fact, they don't. They somehow lost a lot of speed there, and both Mustangs get in front of him going into these last couple of turns, and suddenly the Mercury is nowhere to be seen. He's trying to catch up, but he's unable to, and the yellow Mustang, I think, took the win there. But yeah, the Mercury's victories have been short-lived. I am shocked. But they will not be moving on. Instead, it'll be the gray Mustang beating up the yellow. Gentlemen, welcome to day number 2 of the Heavy Metal Hot Wheels vs. Matchbox tournament. The first group of today is a Toyota Supra, a Firebird, a Porsche, and a Dodge. Now, I'm noticing all 4 of these racers have some very interesting or cool designs. That being said, that Firebird does bring back that creepy face from last time. I don't know if that's a ghost or a comment or what, but it's very unsettling for me for some reason. Right now, though, that car is out in front. The Firebird does have the lead. The Supra is trying to keep up with him. But so far, that Firebird seems to be shooting forward like a rocket. Will they be able to grab the fastest time? Almost. I think the fastest time we've had so far was a 13.21. I am very certain that if they're putting up times like that on the first day, or even the second in this case, then there's no doubt that somebody will break that 13-second mark. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if it happened today. But the Firebird does get that first win. So they are the ones that are up for trying to get a sweep here. Into race number 2, Firebird quickly takes a lead, and one of those cars back there, I think that's the Porsche, is quickly trailing. We've already had 1 or 2 racers in the tournament so far that, for some reason, right after they start, they just can't seem to keep up with the other 3. And that Firebird is launching forward. No one is able to touch him. The other racers are trying to keep up with him, but they can't. And look at that! Our first 13-second breaker. The Firebird has finished with a 12.99. I'm sure a time like that can be beaten, but that is the first time the first time we've seen somebody finish under 13 seconds. And I'm sure there will be plenty more of those. And now the Firebird is in the position to get one more win and guarantee a spot in the finals. The other 3 have some work to do. Because that Firebird, they might start off pretty even with the other racers, but something causes them to launch forward, and then nobody has been able to catch up to them, regardless of which lane the Firebird is in. And look at that, they're leaving all the other racers off camera completely. It's hard to comment on the other racers when you can't even see them. And they just broke the record again. By another 0.2 of a second, the Firebird finishes with a 12.79. So they grab the fastest time, they grab a spot in the finals already, and now they're up for getting a sweep. If they get a sweep here, that'll be a hat trick. But the Dodge, the Porsche, and the Toyota Supra, they got some, they gotta step up their game if they want any shot of staying in contention. Because one of them is gonna move on to the finals with the Firebird. But regardless of who it is, they could be in trouble when it gets to the finals. Because once again, the Firebird is way out in front, no one anywhere near them. And they could get the fastest time again. Are they going to? They do! Not by much, but that's all that is needed. Every little bit helps. Finishing with a 12.72. Now the fastest time. And even with that steep climb, they managed to do it and grab the sweep. They've gotten a perfect run so far, and it'll be the Dodge moving on with them. Let's see who will join them in the second group here. Another Toyota Supra, 2 more Mustangs, and a Ford GT. Now, I think I said on the first day that a Mustang would be my dream car, and one other thing is that I would probably add ghost frames to it. I know that Mustang doesn't have ghost flames per se, but it still looks pretty cool. So there is a small part of me that is rooting for them a little bit. But I'll try not to be too biased in my commentary. Especially since they're way behind right now. And it's the Toyota Supra and the yellow Mustang out in front right now. They're trying to get that first place finish. And it's the Supra that manages to do it. They do finish, however, with a 14.07. Almost all of the Firebird's finishes were under 13 seconds. So if they're finishing in the 14-second range, while they're winning now, they may not be able to do so later. I will give them props for design, though. Those are some very vibrant colors. Into race number 2, the yellow Mustang is trying to grab an early lead and hold on to it, so the other racers will struggle to catch up with him. But the Ford GT is trying to keep up. Here comes the Supra, with a tighter turn, grabs the lead. But the yellow Mustang is still keeping up. Going into this final stretch here, the yellow Mustang is right behind him, and he has the tighter turn, takes advantage of it, and is able to grab the win, finishing with a 13.83. That is slightly better, but compared to the Firebird, that could still be a problem later. Let's look at the overall standings. The Supra and the yellow Mustang are currently tied for first, whereas the fiery Mustang, as I'll call him, along with the Ford GT, they are quickly losing any chances to move on. And in this third race here, once again, the yellow Mustang and the Supra are out in front while the other two trail behind them. They do have the tighter turns, and the Ford GT is actually keeping up with them, trying to pass the yellow Mustang. And he does. He almost passes the Supra, but he's currently unable to. Gets that turn that kills so much of their speed, and the yellow Mustang wins again. This time with a 13.8. Slightly better, but still not great if they want to keep up with this Firebird here. Going into this final race, the yellow Mustang and the Supra are pretty much set to move on. I hate to count anybody out, but when you only finish in third or fourth, you greatly decrease your odds every time. Going into this final race, though, it's the Supra that's out in front, and the yellow Mustang is trying to catch back up. Has that tight turn and is able to, and the Ford GT is actually out in second right now. The question is, will they be able to hold on to it? The yellow Mustang actually has no one near them. The Ford GT is trying to catch him, but that wide turn causes the Supra to steal second, and the yellow Mustang wins again. They did not get the sweep, but they managed to be relatively consistent regardless of which lane they were sitting in. So now it is the Mustang and the Toyota Supra moving on. So now here we go into today's finals. Now based off what we've seen, it's the Firebird that you want to watch out for. The Dodge did join him, but they still did not perform very well compared to some of these other racers. And as we see, the Dodge is quickly falling behind, and the Firebird is once again out in front, trying to get a total sweep. I'm not sure what we should call that. What do you think we should call it, everybody, when somebody wins every single race in one video? Because so far, the Firebird is on track to do that. They didn't quite get the fastest time there, but they still finished under 13 seconds, which they've been able to do all but one time, I think. So they get that first win. The Dodge does keep out of last place, but at this point, it's not the top two that move on. It's the person who finishes in first overall. And while the Supra is trying to keep up with the Firebird, that tight turn did make them gain a bit of a lead over the Supra. And now they have a wider turn, but it just doesn't seem to matter, regardless of which lane they're in. The Firebird seems to have great control, great speed on top of that, and they are just leaving everyone in the dust, finishing with a 12.73. I can't remember exactly what time they finished with earlier that gave them the fastest time. I think it was either that or a 12.71. But they already have 2 wins under their belt. If they get one more, they will automatically join the previous winner of day 1 in the roster for the grand finals. And if they get another win after that, they will get a total sweep. Maybe that's what we'll call it, but feel free to let us know in the comments what you think we should call it when somebody wins every single race in the entire video. The Firebird already has a really good lead. The Mustang is trying to keep up, but so far has been unable to. And here comes the Firebird to win yet another race, finishing with a 12.64. I believe that is now the fastest time we've had so far. They are already going to be moving on. At this point, it's going to be total bragging rights. Because if they get one more win, not only will they be one of the first cars, I don't think they're the first, but one of the first cars in this tournament to get a sweep, but they will be the first one to win every single race they've had so far. If they can do that in the grand finals, that will conclude the Firebird to be one of the best racers we have ever seen. And so far, it looks like they're going to get that total sweep because they yet again leave everyone in the dust to the point where the cameraman is unable to put any focus on them. And they finish with a 12.70. Ladies and gentlemen, the Firebird has won every single race they had today. And they finished under 13 seconds almost every single time. And they will join the previous Mustang in the grand finals. Thank you all so much for watching through the regular season, and now we're moving on to the second quarter. Hey everyone, welcome to day number 3, the first group for today. Oh, look at that, we actually have 2 Corvettes and 2 Chevys. I don't know if I've ever seen 2 pairs of the same vehicle in one group before. Excuse me. But it looks like the Chevy is among the vehicles that have that creepy face on the side. Please, somebody, explain to me what that's supposed to be, because I have no idea, and I think that uncertainty makes it a little more unsettling for me than it already is. Right now, though, the yellow Corvette was trying to hold on to that lead, but that huge turn made them slow down so much, and they were able... Actually, were not able to take the win. They did finish in second, though, so maybe as they get to the tighter lanes, they'll be able to perform a little bit better. Right now, it's the white Chevy that took the win, so that Chevy with the creepy face is already denied a sweep. Speaking of which, that Firebird that also had the face on the side, we did check them for performance-enhancing drugs, because we don't have that happen too often, where somebody wins every single race and finishes with record breakers multiple times. But we did check them, and they were racing legitimately, so no worries there. Right now, that white Chevy is out in front, trying to keep that lead. Going into that wide turn there, but they managed to hold on to it. And the yellow Corvette is trying to hold on to second. I don't think they did. I think the black Chevy managed to pull it off. Meanwhile, that blue Corvette was falling behind again. Something about that car is just not doing so well. Meanwhile, they almost finished. The white Chevy, almost finished under 13 seconds. That's a little bit more promising than some of the racers the other day. Into race number 3, I think the Chevy just needs one more win before they're guaranteed a spot in today's finals. Right now, they don't quite have the lead. The black Chevy's trying to take that from them, but the white Chevy does get that lead back. The yellow Corvette is out in second, trying to close the gap between the two. But so far, that white Chevy is a threat. They go into that wider turn, so maybe the yellow Corvette will take the lead, but they don't, and the white Chevy wins again. What is up with that blue Corvette? They are just quickly falling behind each and every single time, regardless of which lane they're in. I don't know if they're just having a bad day, or they think their life sucks, or what have you, but they could be having some challenges in their head that lead them to think that they are not good at what they do. And of course, if you have that mentality, is what I'm trying to say, going in that you're not going to do well, chances are that's exactly how it's going to go down. And they're already way behind. Meanwhile, the two Chevys are fighting for that top spot. The yellow Corvette is trying to keep up with them. They get that tight turn and they manage to take full advantage and take the lead at the last second, finishing with a 13.23. Not a record breaker, but compared to a lot of the other racers, that's still pretty good. They'll have to pick up any slack that they have if they want to have any contention against the Firebird. But it's the white Chevy and the yellow Corvette moving on. Let's see who will join them in the second group, which has another Corvette, another Toyota Supra, a Cobra, and a Ferrari. I am loving the designs on a lot of these vehicles. Some of them are relatively plain, but others are very cool, at least to me. Let us know in the comments which car has the favorite design of yours so far. Right off the bat though, it's that Corvette that has a really good lead against the other three. They're going to this final stretch, have the widest turn, but because of the lead they have, it does not really matter. And they finish with a 13.43. Still relatively decent, and somehow that Corvette finished backwards? It looked like they were facing forwards up until they got off camera, so maybe somehow when they finished they flipped around. Or maybe the design is just messing with my head. I'm not entirely sure, but they have the win, so let's see how they do in the second race. Yeah, they get a really good start right off the bat. But those other three racers are right behind them, and they're trying to keep up. So far, that Corvette does have a lead, while the other three are staying behind. And right now, they are in a position where the first and second place winners will move on. So they still have a shot regardless of how the Corvette does, but the Corvette is showing to be a decent competitor, especially against these three. And they finished with a 13.55. They did finish a little bit slower there, so that is a little bit dangerous, but compared to the other three, they're still doing relatively well. If they can finish one more time, they will be able to move on automatically. Not as strong of a start, where the Cobra and the Supra are keeping up with them. But that turn makes all the difference as the Corvette pulls away again, trying to keep that up. And it's the Cobra that is trying to catch them and is slowly closing that gap, but it doesn't look like they'll have enough in the tank to close the gap completely. And the Corvette wins again, allowing them another chance to move on. And I don't know what I mean by another chance. My apologies, ladies and gentlemen. But they have guaranteed a spot in today's finals. And so far, every racer has been completely consistent, actually. But when it comes to overall points, it's the Cobra, I believe, that has the greatest odds. But even then, those odds aren't very big when you consider the fact that the other two aren't too far behind them. And it's the Corvette that still has that lead. They're trying to get the sweep. Will they be able to? They do have the tightest turn, which will give them the edge here. And they have that lead. They get the win, which will grant them the sweep. I think so far we've had 3 cars, including this one, get a sweep, and only one so far has been completely undefeated. That being said, it is the Cobra that will join the Corvette in the finals. 2 Corvettes, 1 Chevy, and 1 Cobra. Right now, it's that blue Corvette that seemed to be doing relatively well. However, it's that white Chevy that gets the early lead. The blue Corvette is trying to catch them, but that gap is slowly opening up. Out of nowhere, though, the yellow Corvette takes advantage of the tighter turn, grabs the lead, and is able to hold on to it. They did shake loose a little bit, which caused them to lose some momentum, and that white Chevy saw that opening and managed to get the win. I want to say the blue Corvette did take second place at the last possible moment. Let's see. Yes, they did. They managed to grab second, making the yellow Corvette finish in third. Yeah, that blue Corvette seems to be doing relatively well. But that Chevy is probably their biggest competitor right now. Although a lot of this could depend on which lane they're in, because some of them do relatively well on the tighter turns, but when they do the wider ones, that's when they're in trouble. But that blue Corvette is in the lead, followed by the yellow. They go into the wide turn, and the yellow Corvette is trying to hold on to a lead. I don't think they did. We'll have to check that replay because they did have the lead going into that last stretch, but I think the blue Corvette might have taken it. Yes, they did. And because of that, they now have the lead in points. And right now, having the overall lead is what matters, because no longer will second place have a chance to move on. That white Chevy is trying to make something happen, but so far, it's struggling a little bit. Not terribly, but noticeably. But that being said, they do have a decent-sized lead right now, and they have the tighter turn here. Can they hold on to it going into that extremely wide one? They do. And the Corvettes are fighting for second, and it's the blue one that finished in second, whereas the white Chevy finishes in first. That is definitely going to help them. They desperately needed that. Yeah, they're currently in the lead in points with 12, but that blue Corvette is only 1 point behind them. So at this point, it's essentially whoever finishes in front of the other, especially if one of them finishes in first. Now, if they do end up tying, though, we will go into a tiebreaker. Right now, it's the white Chevy that's out in front, but the yellow Corvette comes out of nowhere, takes the lead, and is trying to extend that lead with the two tight turns that they have. That wide turn is going to kill some of their speed, but they managed... I almost said they managed to hold off the other racers and get the win, but the white Chevy comes in front of him and manages to get that win, allowing them to grab the third spot in the grand finals, finishing only not in first once, but they managed to get the overall win and will join the Mustang. Already had quite a few crazy races, and we're bound to see more on day 4. Hey everyone, welcome. Here's our first group for today. 2 more Corvettes, a Toyota Supra and a BMW. Now that green Corvette, based on the design on the side, seems to have made an indication that they travel a lot. So maybe they have a lot of experience with driving. Let's see if that helps them today. So far, no, because they're the one racer that's quickly falling very behind. Whereas the Corvette and the Supra are out in front. At least the white Corvette, rather. I keep forgetting that there's 2 of them. They have the widest turn, but they still manage, yes they do, to grab a win, finishing with a 13.44. I don't think that's the fastest time. Right now, I believe that belongs to the Firebird, who finished just about a full second faster almost. Because I think they finished with a 12.61. And so far is the only racer to be completely undefeated. Going into race number 2, though, let's see if the switch up of the lanes does anything different. So far, the white Corvette is in third, but now they pull up into second, and they're contending with the Supra to gain the lead, and they do grab it. And they're holding on to it so far, but that BMW is right on his tail. Going into this final stretch, though, the BMW is slightly behind, has the wider turn, and the white Corvette takes full advantage, and I think the Supra managed to grab second in the end. Meanwhile, the car that you would think would do really well does not, finishing in dead last, way behind the other 3 racers. They could very much be asleep at the wheel, which is very dangerous. Because if they fall asleep at the wheel, crash, and possibly, dare I say it, lose their life, that could very well be an issue, while also setting an example for other racers not to do that. Race number 3 now, and look at that! The green Corvette loses a lot of ground almost instantly. maybe they just don't care anymore after that first race, thinking they have no chance. But that white Corvette is on the opposite end, right out in first place. That BMW is trying to catch him, but that white turn is a killer, and once again the Supra takes second place away from him. Did that Corvette not even finish this time? It would seem to be the case. Maybe that steep climb caused them to fall off the track. I was just saying. They could fall asleep at the wheel and derail, and that's pretty much what happened. They lost so much speed they couldn't even stay on, making them be our first non-finisher of a race. At least in this tournament. We've seen quite a few before, but they just tumbled off the track, and I am surprised they're still alive. They are a bit shaken up, not that it matters at this point, because they're pretty much out of the running at this point. The Supra actually is out in first with that tight turn, and with that decent-sized lead, will they be able to hold onto it throughout this turn? It looks like they're struggling. I think they managed to pull it off, though. The Corvette almost got that win, but I think the Supra, with the lead that they had, were able to hold onto it just long enough to deny that white Corvette. Meanwhile, the green Corvette barely got over that turn this time and was able to finish. Not that it matters at this point. But yep, it's that white Corvette and the Supra that will go into the finals. Let's see who will join them. A Ferrari, a BMW, a Mustang, and yet another Corvette. The Corvette seems to be pretty popular in this tournament so far, because we've seen quite a few of them. Right now, though, that Mustang is quickly taking an early lead, leaving the other three in the dust already. That's something the Firebird was able to do, and now the Mustang is trying to do the same thing. Going into these last couple of turns, no one is anywhere near them, excuse me. The Ferrari was trying to be, but just could not do it. And the Mustang finishes with a 12.74. Ladies and gentlemen, if there's anyone that might actually be able to contend with the Firebird, it could very well be this Mustang. In their very first race, they finished with a 12.74, which is just about a tenth of a second slower than the Firebird. I could very well see those two quickly becoming rivals should they ever meet. That Mustang does grab the first win, and if they keep that up, they could very well get a sweep of their own. Look at that, they're already gaining a decent-sized lead despite the fact that they only just started. And so far, they're quickly leaving the other three racers off camera. It's incredible how sometimes that can happen, or even after you just start, you can gain a very big lead in just a short amount of time. And so far, that's what they do. They have the tight turn there, and they finish with a 12.78. Just barely slower than their first time. But the fact that they finished under 13 seconds again, almost finishing at the exact same time they did the first time, that shows that not only are they fast, not only are they good at control, but they're consistent. When you have the combination of those things, you are a very deadly threat to all the racers around you, and for you, that would very well be a good thing, but not so good for any of the people competing against you. Now, I don't know what that Mustang has that allows them to quickly gain that lead, but here they go again. Right now, though, the Ferrari is trying to keep up, but they're slowly falling behind. In fact, I'm not even sure slowly is the right word, because that gap just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and here comes a Mustang finishing yet again, and they finish at the exact same time they did the second race, I'm pretty sure, with a 12.78. But with that first place finish, they've already guaranteed their spot in today's finals. It's just a matter of whether or not they will be able to get that sweep. So far, everybody's been consistent. That being said, the Corvettes in general have been somewhat inconsistent. Some of them do really well, some of them don't. But that Mustang is so determined. Look at that. to get that sweep that they already have a decent-sized lead. Yet again, the Ferrari is trying to catch him. But that gap just keeps getting bigger. And the Mustang has no one anywhere close. They would have to fly off the track with that incredible speed in order for anything to happen for the other racers. But they finish in first once again, and they get the sweep. I think they finished with 12.78 twice and 12.74 twice. Feel free to go back and verify if you wish, but that shows incredible consistency. More so than most. But that Mustang is going on to the finals alongside the Ferrari. And right now, that Mustang has a sweep, and they're looking like they might get a complete sweep. Again, feel free to let us know what you would like that complete sweep to be called when they finish in first throughout the entire video. Wait a minute, ladies and gentlemen, I could be wrong, but I think I saw someone pop off the track entirely, like jumping straight up, going vertical. I want to say that was the Supra. We'll have to check where they are at the end of this race, but right now, the Mustang gets another win. So far hasn't lost and finishes with a 12.59. Let's see what that Supra... They somehow ended up going backwards and stopped on a slope. I'm not sure how that's physically possible, but that pop-up they had earlier definitely was a big contributor to that. And the Supra doesn't finish at all, which is a massive hit when you're trying to move on. And even if they did finish, that Mustang is a massive threat to him and the other two racers. There's something in the way that Mustang is built allows them to quickly gain some speed, which allows them to hold on to a lead, so even if they do slow down, the lead that they've had will allow them to still do really well. Going into that wide turn, they once again finish in first, this time with a 12.69. And it looks like we have yet another non-finish. I might have missed what caused it to happen, but it looks like the white Corvette was unable to finish. Somewhere, somehow, they must have lost a lot of speed. Or maybe they just popped loose. Oh, they did pop loose. Look at that. They went off the track and somehow went back on. That being said, they went back on further back in the track instead of further up. Not something I often see. Not a way you want to finish that race, but if you're going to do it in style. And that's exactly what they did. Right now, though, the Mustang keeps on gaining a huge lead over the other three, leaving them in the dust. The Supra is trying to make something happen, but they are in last currently. The Mustang launches ahead. The other three racers are nowhere to be seen. And they cross in first once again, this time with a 12.64. Not quite the fastest time we've seen. That is a 3/100ths of a second rather. But they are very close to doing it. But they already are going to be joining the Firebird in the grand finals. The question is, will they also be like the Firebird and get a total sweep of today's races? So far, the Mustang and the Firebird are completely undefeated, and if the Mustang manages to do that here, we'll somehow see two racers do that. We almost never see that happen, and if the Mustang finishes first here, we will have two in the first 4 days finishing with an undefeated record. And it looks like, ladies and gentlemen, they will do that. Finishing with a 12.62, just off by 1/100th of a second behind the Firebird's fastest time. If the Firebird's going to have any competition, it's going to be with that Mustang. And now the first half of the roster is complete with 2 undefeated racers. First half of the regular season, we've already had 2 undefeated racers. Let's see if anyone will join them in the second half. Hey everyone, welcome to day number 5. Our first group has a Toyota Supra, a Corvette, a Mustang, and a Turbulence. I believe that is the first Turbulence we've had in this tournament so far. And they look to be pretty straight as an arrow. Let's see if they can fly fast like an arrow. They are in second right now, and first place currently belongs to the yellow Corvette. They have a decent-sized lead, but I'm not about to count the other racers out, even though we've had some pretty fast racers do something similar already. The yellow Corvette does finish in first here. Let's see what the time is. 13.47. They did have a decent-sized lead over the other three, but they already have some serious competitors in the grand finals. So if they make it there, they're going to have to work on their speed quite a bit. But that first place win does definitely help them. Meanwhile, the Turbulence, who seemed to be fast as an arrow at first, finished in third. A good advantage for the Corvette. The Super finishes in second. The Mustang in last. But those lane changes can sometimes make all the difference. Sometimes those wide turns make you lose a lot of your speed, and other racers can take full advantage of it. Meanwhile, the Turbulence almost kind of looks like they're going backwards based on the design of that vehicle. But as far as I know, that's not what's going on. Meanwhile, the Corvette is once again out in front with a decent-sized lead. As long as nothing goes wrong, then they'll be just fine. Here they come towards this finish line, finishing with a 13.09. That is better. They almost broke 13 seconds. If they can keep improving, then that'll give some Corvette fans a sigh of relief. Maybe in that really tight turn, when they're in that lane, they might be able to break 13 seconds. That being said, some of the other racers were able to do that regardless of which lane they were in. They do have 2 wins so far, so if they win one more, they will solidify a spot in today's finals, increasing their odds of moving on to the grand finals. Right now, they're all actually staying relatively close together. Some racers gain a really good lead right at the start, and sometimes it takes other racers a little bit to get going, and that's what happened to the Corvette, as they once again pull out in front. The Turbulence trying to make something happen, but it doesn't seem to be working, and the Corvette goes into that tight turn, has a lead, heads towards the finish, and manages to get another first place win, guaranteeing their chance at being in the finals, finishing with a 13.23. Still really good. That being said, it looks like we have a non-finisher. Oh, they're upside down too. Oh my goodness. Oh, it looks like it was the Mustang. They must have had not enough speed to get over that hill and tumble down. Yep, that's exactly what happened, and they bounced off the walls. That is a very dangerous accident. I'm hoping they're okay, but injuries like that can really impede a driver's ability to fully grasp what's going on. And that will definitely affect their driving, I am sure. Now, we've had some very deadly crashes already, and that may be one of the worst ones we've seen. Yeah, that is definitely affecting their driving. They are quickly falling behind. Meanwhile, the Corvette already has 3 wins. They're trying to get the sweep. Oh, they pop loose! And they end up upside down on the track. Meanwhile, the Turbulence takes full advantage of it, gets the win this time around, and the Corvette does not get the sweep. Meanwhile, the Mustang finishes in third. I'm not entirely sure what caused them to pop loose. Maybe something on the very edge of the track caught the lip of the vehicle and flipped them over. That being said, despite the fact that they did not finish, the fact that they won every other race before that allowed them to move on automatically, and the Turbulence will join them. Let's see who will join them in the second group. We have the Sunburner, the Chevy, the Ford, and the Mercedes. Personally, I'm not seeing how the Ford could do well. Doesn't seem to be the most aerodynamic out of the bunch. But as we've seen before, you don't want to judge a book by its cover. Meanwhile, the Fireburner is out in the back, but they do manage to take advantage of that tight turn and move up to third. But that Chevy already has a good lead. And going to that last turn, they do lose a bit of speed, but that lead that they have allowed them to get the first place regardless, finishing with a 14.59. That is not very good. You want to, at the very least, based on what we've seen so far, finish in the 13-second range. And if you finish under 13 seconds, that's much, much better. Right now, they do get that first place win. Let's see if they can improve with every race like some of the others have. They're currently in first alongside the Ford. Yep, like I said, never judge a book by its cover. I didn't think the Ford would do that well. It didn't seem like the most aerodynamic vehicle, but so far, they're keeping up with the leaders. The Chevy's out in front, and the Ford is grabbing second. They had a very smooth transition around that last turn. That's the kind of driving you need sometimes. If you can keep control over some of these obstacles, that can really help you against some of the other competitors. Right now, though, they did finish in second again. And the Chevy finished in first. And Chevy is now in that position where another first place finish would guarantee a spot in today's finals. And right now, the top two are the ones that will be able to move on. So the Ford is still in a good position to do that, especially if they finish in second or better again. And right now, they get that tight turn, and they rocket ahead. They seem to do really well against those tight turns. Something about their distribution of weight or something. And they allow themselves to get the win, which will greatly increase their odds of moving on. They did finish with a 14.46. That's still not very good. But if they can keep good control on those turns, that could help them later. But it's looking like the Chevy and the Ford will be moving on at this rate. But maybe some unexpected miracle will happen for one of the other two. We'll have to see what happens. We've seen just in that other group that just because you finish in first doesn't mean you always will. Maybe someone will fly off the track, who knows? Right now the Chevy is trying to make up for what happened earlier. It's staying in front of the Ford. The question is, will they be able to stay that way? Going to that last turn, the Ford has the easier time on the tighter turn. They almost managed to get in front of the Chevy, but they don't quite do it. And the Chevy and the Ford would be moving on. It was a valiant effort from the other two, but the way those other two racers that are moving on now, the Chevy and the Ford handled those turns, allowed them to secure a spot in the finals. Let's see how they do against the others. So now it's that Corvette, the Chevy, the Ford, and the Turbulence. Right now, the Corvette and the Chevy seem to be the most solid out of them, but that Ford has thrown a wrench into things, and the Turbulence is showing to not be a slouch necessarily. Now, I would be very surprised if the Corvette doesn't get a sweep here, because they would have last time if they managed to stay on their feet the entire time. But they flipped upside down once, which threw everything off balance. They did get the first place finish here, finishing with a 13.14. That is much better compared to some of the times we've seen up to this point. They still would need to break 13 seconds if they want to make a good name for themselves in the grand final should they move on. But a first place finish is always good regardless of where you're at any point. Because even if you don't move on, finishing in first could stop someone else you don't like from moving on. Because sometimes we have seen racers just outright hate each other or constantly butting heads or something. And that can affect how they race. You don't want to let your emotions affect you, and sometimes that has happened. Right now the Corvette is out in front, trying to get that sweep. They somehow lose a lot of speed out of nowhere, derail, grind on the edges of the track, and just, they don't finish. Somehow, both times, they've had an instance where they just did not finish. It's very interesting though, because from my angle, it looked like they were doing fine and they just started drifting almost, which seems impossible given that there's rails on either side of each lane. But yet they just don't finish, and that blows the door wide open. And it's the Ford, and I missed who the other one was. But they have two racers at 6 points, and the Ford is one of them. The Ford seems to be really good at taking full advantage of any opportunity they receive. Whether it be the lane that they're placed in, or in this case, getting in front of a racer that makes a mistake or flies off the track. The Corvette is trying to make up for that mistake and is currently out in first again. They got to hold on to it if they want any shot. And they do, finishing under 13 seconds this time. That is much better for them. They have now shown that they can finish under 13 seconds. If they can do that consistently, then they'll be a much bigger threat later. But now they have 10 points, allowing them to get the points lead back. If they can finish in first again, then they will move on to the grand finals. If they don't, however, then we could have a surprise victor here. They're all staying relatively close together. The Ford is in the back. But once again, they take advantage of the skill they have on those turns and gain a little bit of ground. But they are in last right now, whereas the yellow Corvette is once again in first. As long as they don't slip up, they will move on to the grand finals. They go around that tight turn, they stay level, and they finish with a 13.04. Still really good. And they secure spot number 5 in the grand finals. They are shown to be able to break 13 seconds. If they can do that all the time, then they'll be much better off. Thank you so much for watching. Here's your roster up to this point, and we'll see you in the next one. Had some incredible racers so far in the first 5 days. With 3 days left, I'm sure we'll see more. Hey everyone, welcome to day number 6. In the first group, we have a Ford, a Cadillac, a Corvette, and a Ferrari. Now, I've made comments in a previous race how the Ford, I didn't think should have been able to do well, given it didn't seem to be all too aerodynamic. But that Ford definitely proved me wrong, so I wouldn't be surprised if this one does the same. And it looks like they will, because right now they're right behind the Ferrari, who's currently holding on to the lead. They come into this tighter turn, which gives them the edge over the Ford. They take full advantage of it, and they finish in first with a 13.4, which is definitely better than sometimes we've had. But you definitely want to try and finish under 13 seconds if you want to have a chance in the grand finals. Meanwhile, it looks like the Cadillac did not finish at all. They wound up... I don't think they were backwards there. I think they just got stuck. They just did not have the speed to get over that turn. And we have a non-finisher already. Definitely not a good way to start. We've seen other vehicles finish in first 3 times and then just not finish at all in one of the other races they had. So maybe the same can be done for the Cadillac, but they are quickly falling behind while the other racers are pulling away. The Ferrari is out in front, the Ford right behind him, and the Corvette right behind him. Yeah, the Ferrari is out in front, the Ford tried to catch him, but so much speed was lost, at least to the point where the Ferrari stayed in the lead and finished this time with a 13.24. They've definitely improved, which is something you definitely want to do if you finish with slower times. But the Cadillac just does not finish again. That's 2 in a row. If that happens, you pretty much guarantee the fact that you're not moving on. You need to finish in first both times at that point if you really want to have a decent shot. But it's not looking good for the Cadillac, and it's looking great for the Ferrari. Meanwhile, in this third race, they're staying relatively close together at the very start, but the Cadillac is still falling behind, even with that tight turn. They just lost so much speed going around that last edge. And the Ferrari, the Ford, they're fighting for first, but here comes the Corvette, and the Ferrari's pulling away. Going into this last turn, is he going to stay on the track? Yes, he will. And he finishes in first yet again, finishing with a 13.2. He is slowly improving. You still want to try and finish under 13 seconds at some point. Meanwhile, the Cadillac gets stuck in pretty much the same spot as he did in the last race. I've had instances before where I had thought that maybe a car driver was drunk or they got something else influencing how they think or drive. But this could very well be the case here, because they're not even getting to the latter half of the track. They're just so slow throughout the entire time. Maybe it's the way the car is designed, or maybe they've got some impairment caused by something that they should not have been taking. But they are way behind again. The Ferrari's way out in front, and they're trying to get the sweep. The Ford and the Corvette are trying to catch him. So far, they just cannot do it. And the Ferrari will coast along, get a first place finish, finishing with a 13.22. Still not under 13 seconds, but they are consistent, which is another good factor to have. And the Cadillac never finished. They managed to get to the bottom this time, but now not only have we had some racers that were undefeated, but now we have a racer who never finished even once. It'll be the Ford and the Ferrari moving on, though. Let's see in the second group who will join them. We have another Corvette, a BMW, a Pontiac, and a Mercedes. Now, I could very well be wrong, but that Corvette seems a little familiar. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure we had that exact vehicle in the tournament before. And if that's the case, they're going to have to check to see if that's the same driver. I'm not sure what the technicalities are of a racer going more than once, especially if they didn't do so well the first time. But that will be looked into. In the meantime, though, the BMW does finish in first, but they finish with a 13.8. Finishing in the 13-second area can be good. However, you want to do it in the low 13 seconds. And look at this. The Corvette was going back and forth a little bit. It seemed like they had enough speed to go up the hill, but not go back down the other side, keeping them from finishing. Yeah, look at that. If you see on the left edge of the screen, they were going back and forth a little bit, and the Corvette just didn't finish. But the BMW finished in first, so they're the one that is in contention now. Try and get a sweep. If they can stay consistent, that could very well happen. We've already had quite a few sweeps, actually. And we've had 2 racers so far that have not lost a race. The BMW is quickly getting a decent-sized lead. But here comes the Mercedes, trying to catch him. And he has the tighter turns right now. That could really help. But the BMW is holding on to the lead. And now he has the tighter turn, takes full advantage, gains a bigger lead, and now finishes with a 13.77. This could be good for them now, but maybe not so much later. If they can show signs of improvement, that'll give them a sigh of relief. And the Corvette doesn't finish again. I don't know what's going on with the Cadillac and the Corvette today. Maybe they're in cahoots with each other. But it's like once you don't finish once or twice, you're pretty much out of it already. But it looks like they just can't get over that last hill. So we have somebody who hasn't lost yet, and we have someone who hasn't even finished yet in this group, just like before. It's odd that this would happen even once, but the fact that it happens twice so far in the same day, no less, is absolutely incredible. The BMW is trying to get that sweep now, or at least guarantee a spot in the finals. And that lead is helping him do that, but the Mercedes is trying to close that gap again. That tighter turn does allow them to do it slightly, but the BMW has good control and keeps that lead. And they take the win once again, solidifying their spot. And they're finishing with a 13.76. Still not great. And the Corvette is still moving, but they didn't even get to the turn before the one they usually get stuck on. And look at that, another car didn't finish. In my recollection, I don't know if I've ever seen 2 vehicles not finish in the same race. We have seen all kinds of things happen that are either rare or have never happened, and we're not even done with the first 8 days of this tournament. We're only 6 days in at this point, and it's already shown there's some crazy, wacky events. Well, look at this. The Mercedes is actually out in front with the BMW, but now the BMW has a tighter turn, gets that lead back, quickly grows it, and is trying to extend it as much as he can before he gets to that wide hill at the end. And he gets through with no problem, and he gets the sweep, finishing a little bit better this time with a 13.52. The Pontiac manages to finish this time But somehow, in the same day, we have not one, but two racers that never finished. That is extremely rare. If we had a nickel for every time that happened today, we'd have 2 nickels. Which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. 2 sweeps and 2 non-finishers. Let's see how this translates into the finals. With a Ferrari, a Ford, a Mercedes, and a BMW. 2 red cars, a white one, and a black one. Right now the Ford is still proving me wrong, showing that despite the design, they can still do relatively well. That BMW is out in front, and we actually have 2 vehicles right now, that being the BMW and the Ferrari, that haven't lost yet. Which means in this race right here, one of them is about to be dethroned and lose a chance at a total sweep. And it looks like the Ferrari will keep that alive, causing the BMW to lose that chance. And the Ferrari did finish with a 13.23. They're usually staying around 13.2, which is pretty good. But again, we've had some racers almost always finish under 13 seconds, so they still could use some improvement in their overall times. In race number 2, the Ferrari is trying to keep that lead, staying out in front of the rest of the group. And that turn did make them lose some speed, but they still have the first place spot. But here comes the BMW trying to catch him, and he's actually trying to pass him. Is he going to be able to? That turn is going to help. Yes, they will. The BMW is out in front trying to shut down the Ferrari, but now the Ferrari has a tighter turn. He's trying to get the win, and he does. The Ferrari's hopes of getting a total sweep are still alive, finishing with a 13.27. That was definitely close. I'm sure the BMW was not happy with the Ferrari for taking away his chances at a total sweep. But the Ferrari's chances are still alive. If he can finish in first one more time, he will automatically seal his spot in the grand finals alongside the previous 5. And then if he wins again after that, that is another total sweep, which will be the 3rd one this tournament so far. They are just barely in front of the BMW, but the BMW takes the lead there. The Ferrari has a tighter turn, and he takes the lead back. Here comes the BMW trying to catch him, and he can't. So the Ferrari has automatically moved on to the grand finals. At this point, he's just trying to get bragging rights and make himself the 3rd racer, actually. It's hard to even say that because it rarely ever happens, but the 3rd racer to have not lost a single race. Right now the Ford is actually got a slight lead, but that wide turn I'm sure is going to make a difference, and it does. The Ferrari is out in front. He is trying to get that total sweep right now. And the BMW is trying to catch back up to him. But the Ford is actually the one in second trying to fight him, and he's right on his tail. But that wide turn is going to make all the difference again, and it does. And the Ferrari is the 3rd racer to have not lost a single race yet. So in today's races, we've had another person who hasn't lost and 2 racers that never finished. Crazy events. But now we have 2 spots left to fill, and I'm sure they're going to be good. Thank you all. Approaching the grand finals, but we'd still have 2 more spots to fill. Hey everyone, welcome to day number 7. Our first group has a Mustang, a Corvette, a Dodge, and a shoebox. I believe that is the first shoebox we've seen in this tournament so far. So this ought to be interesting. Let's see how they can do. Right now, the shoebox is in front, actually. But the Dodge, is out in front, and then the Corvette takes the lead from him. And now those 2 are taking a decent-sized lead over the other 2. And the Corvette is coming into this final stretch with the lead, but he has the wider turn compared to the Dodge. Does not matter, though. The Corvette finishes in first. Ooh, finishing with a 13.7. At this point, if you're not finishing in the low 13s or the high 12s, you could very well be in trouble. Meanwhile, the Mustang driver ends up on their side. Definitely not the most gruesome crash we've seen up to this point, but still thoroughly unpleasant, I'm sure. Somehow, every time, these racers do come back despite their crashes, so that's a form of tenacity you don't often see. Coming into race number 2 now. The shoebox seems to start off well, but he may not be able to keep that up. I don't know if it's built to last that long. And once again, the Dodge and the Corvette take the lead coming into the second turn. The shoebox is actually keeping up with the Dodge, though. He does have a couple tight turns here. Let's see if he can take full advantage of those. He gets in front of the Dodge. The Corvette is out in front, though. And because of that tighter turn, the Dodge takes second place back. And the Corvette does finish a little bit faster this time, but still not quite the times you want to pull off based on some of the times we've seen so far. The fastest time currently is held, if I remember correctly, by the Firebird from day 2, finishing with a 12.64 at one point. Right now, the Corvette is undefeated. If he can get one more race, he solidifies himself in the day's finals, not the grand finals yet, but it'll look very promising if he can pull off a guaranteed spot and maybe even a sweep. I also want to take this time to let everyone know that starting on January 13th, I believe, next year, will be the 3rd mail-in tournament. At this point, all the spots have been filled, but we love to get the audience involved as much as we can. So to have more racers sent in, by actual people makes it all that more engaging. And in advance, if I say any of your cars' names incorrectly, I apologize. Right now, though, it looked like the Corvette actually finished in second that time, so he's not guaranteed a sweep anymore. Like, he can't get that, at least in this set of races before the finals. But he's still looking pretty good, so maybe he can get a sweep in the finals once he gets there. It's just a matter of who's going to join him at this point, and it's the shoebox out in front. But as I say, that quickly loses that spot to the Corvette and the Dodge, who are once again out in front of him. And that Corvette just slingshots himself along those tight turns. He does lose some speed on that wide one there, but it just does not matter, and he finishes with a 13.45. He's slowly improving, but he's got to pick up the pace if he wants any chance against some of the other people in the grand finals at this point. And the Mustang just trails behind. I think that's been a consistent thing with some of the Mustangs so far. But it'll be the Corvette and the Dodge moving on. Let's see who will join them in the finals in this second group, which contains a Supra, a Volkswagen, a Buick, and a Turbulence. Now, I don't know if I've seen a Volkswagen like that in these races either. And because this is the first one, I'm not going to try and make any sort of predictions on how it does, because I've definitely judged a few cars before they've raced before and was genuinely surprised by how they did. At this point, though, it's the Supra out in front. And who's in second? It looks like it's the Buick. But even then, the gap between first and second is so vast. The Supra did lose quite a bit of speed, but that huge lead allowed him to keep that lead and get the first win, finishing with a 14.28. Still not great, but if you can get more wins, then you'll be able to practice more, and by doing that, maybe you'll improve your times. So in the standings right now, the Supra's in front, the Buick's in third, the Volkswagen in second, and despite Turbo being in the name, the Turbulence is currently in last. Now, I don't know about you, but I've always been a fan of those little Volkswagen Beetles, I think they're called, because of the design. And part of the reason is because I actually once on the road saw a Volkswagen Beetle like that had a giant wind-powered wind-up key on the back, which was pretty adorable. So what's the wackiest car design you've ever seen? Let me know in the comments below. For now, though, we're taking a look as the Supra is taking the lead once again with a wide margin, and does finish a little bit faster. Buick in second, Volkswagen in third, and the Turbulence in fourth again. And I believe the Supra has already taken care of the two wider lanes at the end here. So in theory, he'll have tighter turns at the end, allowing for possibly faster times. But we'll have to see as we get into these last couple of races in this group. The Buick actually starts off with the lead, but the Supra does have a couple tighter turns to take advantage of, and he does just that, while the Volkswagen is in second. But I don't know if the Buick is going to take the lead, or not necessarily the lead back, but second place from him, and he does, and the Volkswagen starts to fall behind, and the Buick is actually trying to catch up to the Supra, but the Supra has the tighter turns now, and he takes full advantage, goes into that final stretch without a care in the world, and finishes with a 14.18. And I think everybody finished in the same positions again, showing just how consistent they can be for better or for worse. Yet the Supra does have 3 wins, so they're already in the finals. They'll need one more if they want the sweep at least, and a possible chance at being another undefeated racer, which I believe at this point we've had 3. We had the Firebird, who also has the fastest time, a Mustang from I think it was day 4, and then a Ferrari from day 6. So I'm sure the Supra would like to be the 4th one to join that group of undefeated racers, but so far the Buick is actually in front of him, and the Supra does have the tight turn and thankfully gives him the lead back at the last moment, allowing him to get the sweep, moving on to the finals, and a possible shot at being the 4th undefeated racer. Now we're going to have to check every undefeated racer before the grand finals to make sure none of them are taking any steroids or any sort of performance-enhancing enhancements. We'll call them enhancements for now. But as we get into these finals, the Supra, the Buick, the Corvette, and the Dodge, all 4 have shown to be at least decent racers. None of them have been pulling off the fastest time so far, but the Corvette and the Dodge currently hold a lead. But here comes the Supra and the Buick, and they're keeping up with the Dodge, but the Corvette is holding on to a lead, and he has a tighter turn here. Not that he necessarily needed it, but he finished with a 13.66. That is a little bit better than a lot of the times we've seen up to this point today. But he still wants to get a little bit faster if he wants a chance at winning in the grand finals. Now the Corvette, because of that win, also denied the Supra any chance of being an undefeated racer. But because he did get the sweep earlier, we're going to make sure he's not cheating in any way. Right now the Corvette is out in front, the Supra's behind him, but here comes the Buick and the Dodge, and the Dodge with a tighter turn takes the lead, trying to keep the Corvette from taking it back, and he's growing his lead, has the widest turn though. Is that going to affect the race? It kind of does, and the Corvette, because of the lane they were in, they were able to get a tighter turn, launch themselves forward, and get the lead back right at the very end. And it looks like the Supra barely finished in front of the Buick. Now the Corvette has 2 wins here. If they win in this race, they will take spot number 7 in the grand finals on day 9. But if they don't, then it's still open possibly for one of the other racers. Right now the Corvette is actually in the back, but quickly launching themselves forward right next to the Dodge, having a tighter turn so they increase the size of their lead. And the Dodge is trying to keep up with them, but they're gradually losing speed as the Corvette gets into this last turn. The Dodge is trying to take advantage of the tighter turn, is not able to, and the Corvette, finishing with a 13.47, is guaranteed to move on to the grand finals. It's just a matter now of trying to get a sweep, which they almost did in the first group, but I believe the Buick, or whoever was with them, denied them that in one of the races. So they're trying to redeem themselves here a little bit. They can't get the complete sweep, but any sort of sweep is still respectable. And it looks like they're absolutely determined because they started off kind of falling behind, but they launched themselves forward, and the Buick somehow lost so much speed that they're nowhere to be seen with this group anymore. And the Corvette is so determined to get that sweep. He's almost there. The Dodge takes second place, but the Corvette finishes with a sweep, expanding their confidence and moving on to the grand finals. They still want to pull up faster times if they can later, but the fact that they are in the grand finals will give them a chance to do so. And now there is only one spot left. Thank you so much for watching. We have one more day to go and one more spot to fill. Hey everybody, welcome to day number 8, the final day before the grand finals. The first group for today is a Toyota Supra, a Ford GT, and a Chevy. Now that red Ford doesn't appear to be very aerodynamic, particularly because of the top part of that vehicle sticking up. But look at this. They are quickly shutting me up. They're quickly gaining a decent sized lead already. The Toyota Supra is trying to keep up with them, but somehow that Ford is keeping a decent sized lead. I gotta keep reminding myself not to judge a book by its cover, or in this case, a vehicle, by its design, because they finished in first without much of an issue at all. We see surprises all the time, and that certainly surprised me a little bit. If there was anybody I expected to finish in first, it was not going to be that one. But they do finish with a 13.73. Still not exactly where you want to be in terms of times. Maybe they can finish a little bit faster, but especially compared to those other three, they were lightning fast. So now they have one win under their belt. They obviously want to try and go for a sweep and possibly not lose a race ever. But we'll have to cross that bridge once we get to it, should we ever do so. They currently have the lead over the Supra, who is trying everything they can to keep up with them, taking advantage of tighter turns. But that Ford just seems to have good control, which can be just as important as speed. Sometimes you could be the fastest vehicle, but if you fly off the track easily, it will spell trouble. And that Ford GT didn't even get to the final stretch. And it looks like the Chevy didn't finish either. There aren't too many instances where two people don't finish. We'll at least be able to see how the Chevy didn't. Oh, it was another instance where they couldn't get over that last turn and tumbled down. I gotta give props to the tenacity of these racers, because we've seen some brutal, absolutely gruesome crashes where they're tumbling down, winding upside down, crashing into each other and what have you, but they still keep racing, and sometimes it doesn't seem to affect them too much. I'm not sure how they do that, but props to them. At this point though, the Ford has 2 wins under their belt. If they get one more, they are guaranteed to be in today's finals with a possible chance at a sweep, and they get it. They get the win that they need to move on automatically to the finals. It's just a matter of who will join them. It looks like it'll be the Toyota Supra at this point, but maybe one of the other two will pull off something that we just do not expect. Yeah, the Ford is just 1 win away from a sweep and keeping hope alive to be an undefeated racer. If the Ford can actually do that, they will be the 4th and final racer in the grand finals to, at this point, have not lost a single race in this tournament. Which will mean also that half of the people in the grand finals will have not lost a race yet, so it will be interesting to see what happens when they get pitted up against each other. And that Ford just launched themselves like a slingshot around that turn, giving themselves an even bigger lead, and the other 3 are practically nowhere to be seen. I'm honestly surprised about these times, because it looks like the Ford is moving so fast, but they are barely breaking the 13.5 second mark, whereas some of the fastest racers have almost broken the 12.5 second mark. So there are some racers going a full second almost faster than him. But right now the Ford and the Supra are moving on to today's finals. Let's see who joins them in the second group, which could be a Ferrari, a Nissan, another Volkswagen, and a Dodge. This particular Volkswagen appears to be a convertible. The other one was not. It seemed to be a Volkswagen Beetle that had a round edge all the way across the top. But being a convertible, it doesn't look like it's actually helping them, because they are way behind already. Whereas the Nissan and the Dodge are out in front. And the Nissan is actually doing pretty well going into this turn And the Dodge is somewhat behind him, but here comes the Ferrari. I think the Ferrari may have actually beaten the Dodge to the finish. Those turns can be massive game changers. Sometimes you could have a decent sized lead, but if you lose so much speed on the wider turns, it could make it so much harder to keep up that momentum. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was the Dodge in second. Or no, it was. What am I talking about? My apologies, everyone. Now we go into race number 2 here. The Nissan is currently the one with the win. Anyone who beats him at this point will stop them from having a sweep, will stop them from being undefeated, but we will have to see. Yeah, my apologies about that slip-up. The Ferrari and the Dodge are very similar in color, so when they're right next to each other, it's hard to tell which one is which. Nissan is right between them, though. And let's see if I can get this right this time. I think that was the Dodge that finished in first that time, so the Nissan will not get a sweep or a chance at being undefeated. Yeah, I want to say the Ferrari is the slightly slimmer one. And a 14.01 still not great. They gotta step up their game. But the Nissan and the Dodge, I was right that time, thankfully, are tied for first. So neither one will be undefeated. Neither one is guaranteed a spot in the finals after this race. They will have to fight in that 4th race to see who will go into the finals. It is the top 2 here, but only one will have a chance at moving on to the grand finals. The Nissan is currently fighting with the Dodge for that first place spot. The Dodge does take the lead, but the Nissan now has the tighter turn, takes advantage of it. Can he hold on to the lead? He does, with the Dodge finishing right behind him, and the Nissan finished with a 14 flat. And we have yet another non-finisher, that being the Volkswagen. If I had to guess by position, they tumbled. Yeah, almost exactly how other cars have crashed there. It's like they've already counted themselves out at this point, but I'm sure that's not the way they want to go out. So hopefully, for their sake, they will be able to at least finish this race. But they're already kind of wobbling from side to side. That could be because of how small that vehicle is. But right now, the other 3 are fighting for that first place position. The Nissan is out in front with the Dodge right behind him. The Dodge will, I believe, have the tighter turn going into the last stretch, but he's just far enough behind that it doesn't matter, and the Nissan takes the win, finishing with a 13.8. We haven't seen too many racers recently finish under 13.5, which is a problem if they want to go up against some of the other people already in the grand finals. But the Volkswagen did at least finish this time. But it's the Nissan and the Dodge moving on to the finals. So here we go. The Nissan, the Dodge, the Supra, and the Ford. The Ford has been the biggest surprise to me today. And the Ford actually does have a shot at being the 4th and final undefeated racer. They are the only racer today to have not lost a race yet. And they did start out slightly behind, but they have the lead again, and they quickly lose it as I say that. But they are keeping up with the other racers pretty well, and they have the tightest turn here. They're gaining a bit of speed, and they take advantage of that tight turn, finishing in first. Again, still not a great time, but the fact that they haven't lost a race yet is very good. They only need to win 3 more times, and they will make it so that half of the people in the grand finals will have not lost a race yet. Here we go into race number 2. The Ford takes a slight lead, but the Nissan is edging him out slightly. But they have the 2 wider turns, and now it's the Supra out in front, and they're evenly spaced apart, but here comes that Ford, somehow gaining a nice burst of speed, widening the gap between first and second. The Nissan is trying to catch him, but the Ford is gradually expanding how big their lead is, and they finish in first yet again. If they finish one more time, they will guarantee their spot in the grand finals, and then they'll only have one more race after that to try and have to be one of the few racers, to have not lost a race. I know I keep bringing that up, but that's because it's pretty rare that that ever happens, that this many racers will do that. So the fact that we might have 4 will definitely make things interesting in the grand finals. Right now, though, the Dodge and the Nissan are out in front. That Ford is trying to catch them, and so far they do, but the lead they have is not quite as big. The Nissan and the Supra are trying to catch up. It looked like they were going to, but that turn just launched the Ford forward like a rocket, and they finish yet again. So the Ford, finishing in first rather, the Ford is moving on to the grand finals. They have locked in the final spot. It's just a matter of whether or not they will also join the grand finals as an undefeated racer. This one race will decide that. We've seen some people get so close, but then get denied it by another racer, and I'm sure these other 3 are going to do everything they can to try and keep that from happening. But somehow, in that particular stretch, every time, the Ford gains the lead, even if they didn't start with it, and they are in first, but the Ford is right behind him. Well, not the Ford, I'm sorry. The Dodge was right behind him, but the Ford is the one who ultimately takes the win, so they will move on in the grand finals as an undefeated racer, making it so half of the people in the grand finals are currently undefeated. Only one of them will ultimately be able to do that if they can. But we are finally here. Hey everyone, welcome to the finals of this tournament. And here is your roster, where half of them are undefeated actually. They have not lost a single race. In this first group is the Firebird, the Chevy, the Corvette, and the Mustang. Now, I believe out of these 4, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think only one of them actually is undefeated, and that being the Firebird. I think the other 3 were a red Mustang, a silver Ferrari, and a red Ford. Right now, though, the Firebird is showing why he is an undefeated racer, because he is out in front. He did shake loose a little bit, but that doesn't seem to faze him as he goes into this final stretch. No one even close to him, finishing with a 12.95. Not his fastest time, which I still think is a 12.64. I could very well be wrong, so please correct me if I'm wrong. But the Firebird takes the first win. They still have not lost one race. That face on the side is still creepy, but that doesn't affect how they race. It just affects how I react to the design. In this second race now, Firebird does have the slight edge, but the Chevy took it from him for a second before the Firebird took it right back. And now they're trying to expand their lead as much as they can. That Mustang is trying to catch him with the Chevy right behind him. And here comes the Mustang. They're trying to catch him, but they just cannot do it with that wide turn. And the Firebird finishes with a 12.96, under 13 seconds yet again. One more win, and they will be in the last group of this tournament. The top 4. And they still haven't lost a race. Here we go into race number 3. This could make or break everything. At least for the Firebird. They're trying to keep that lead. So far, some of these faster racers we've seen don't start out that fast, but once they get to the second or third turn, they suddenly start pulling away out of nowhere, and that's exactly what the Firebird is doing. The Corvette is trying to take at least second, now trying to catch up to the Firebird. But again, that wide turn just seems to be having it in for all these other racers. And the Firebird is finishing almost at the exact same time each and every time, only being off by about 2/100ths of a second usually. But the Firebird has already sealed their spot in the absolute final group. It's just a matter of whether or not they can win this one and get another sweep. So far, the Chevy is in front, but that wide turn changes everything. And there goes the Firebird, trying to make it so they have another sweep and keeping their hopes alive at being an undefeated racer throughout this entire tournament, which is extremely rare, but is definitely possible, especially with a racer like this. They have the sharpest turn, rather, and they do it. they finish with an undefeated record still in these grand finals, finishing with a 12.9. The Corvette will be joining him, but that score is not very promising if they want to take on the Firebird. In the second group, the Mustang, the Ford, the Ferrari, and a Corvette. The Mustang, Ford, and Ferrari are the other three racers that have not lost a single race. And because three of them are here, it's pretty much guaranteed that at least two of them will lose their chance to stay undefeated, in these groups here. And so far, the one out in front appears to be the Mustang, so if anyone's going to keep their hopes alive at staying undefeated, it's going to be him, and he does it. So the Ford and the Ferrari have already lost their chance at staying undefeated throughout this entire tournament. Now there's only two racers throughout this whole thing that have not lost a race yet. That Mustang and the Firebird. So let's see if that Mustang can keep it up. I am sure that the Ford and the Ferrari are not happy at their chances being killed. So I'm sure they're going to have it out for that Mustang, which could be very dangerous in races like these. So it's probably a good thing that all the lanes are separated and never merge. The Mustang is having none of that though, and they take off with the lead yet again. And no one is able to catch them as they finish in first once more. This time with a 12.83. That's about as fast as the Firebird's been getting. If not even faster, actually. But generally, it's around the same, and the Mustang still hasn't lost a race. If they can get one more, they will join the Firebird in the Grand Finals. They already are starting off with a decent lead when it comes to starting the race off. And here they go. The Corvette is trying to stay on his tail, but the Mustang is really good at expanding their lead. The Ferrari and the Ford are trying to speed up and catch him, possibly jumping lanes to knock him out of the track because they're just so angry at him. But the Mustang does finish in first yet again, so he will join the Firebird in the Grand Finals. If he wins one more race here, then there will be two racers in the last round of the tournament that still have not lost a race. That will make it an absolute nail-biter, and some of the times that Mustang has been pulling off in these groups here show that they could very well be the one racer to possibly dethrone the Firebird for not only being the undefeated racer of the entire tournament, but also possibly, if they do well, grab the fastest time from them. And it looks like they will grab that win. So we will have two racers in the grand final round that have not lost a race. And it'll be the Ferrari joining him. But the two racers that are undefeated are really the only two that seem to have any shot at winning this whole thing. The Mustang and the Firebird are now fierce rivals. Only one of them will have a chance to grab the title at being the undefeated champion, which is very rare, but that makes it all the more exciting that it could happen today. If the Ferrari or the Corvette finishes in front of them at any point, then their chances are dashed for both of them. Right now the Mustang is in front of the Firebird, but the Firebird has a tighter turn, takes advantage of that, and grabs the lead, finishing with a 12.83. So now it's the Mustang that has been denied a chance at being the undefeated champion, and the Firebird keeps their hopes alive with only 3 races to go. Into heat number 2. 3 races left in this tournament, and the Firebird has a shot at staying undefeated. I'm sure the Mustang really wants to take that away from them since the Firebird just took it from them. But we will have to see what happens. They are side by side. And they go into these last couple of turns, and the Mustang is in front, but here comes the Firebird again, and it's actually the Ferrari right next to him trying to grab second. But they just could not do it, and the Firebird once again finishes in first finishing with almost the exact same time. They only have 2 races left. Will they be able to pull this off? If they win one more time, then they are the guaranteed champion. But they're 2 races away from being an undefeated champion. I'm sure this has everyone in the audience on the edges of their seats. The Mustang has the better start, but the Firebird takes the lead back, and the Mustang is right on his tail. The Mustang has a tighter turn, so here we go into this next one. And the Mustang takes the lead back. Can they hold on to it? They have a tighter turn again, but the Firebird is coming up fast. And now he has the tighter turn, grabs the lead, and the Firebird grabs the ultimate win. They will be your champion. And now, not only this, but they are 1 race away from being the undefeated champion of this tournament, not losing a single race. And they still have the title for the fastest time so far. So if they finish in first, they will be undefeated. They will have the fastest time, and quite frankly, they may have the creepiest design. But they are quickly falling behind here. The Mustang is out in front. They have the wider turn, but here comes the Firebird out of nowhere, grabbing the lead yet again. The Firebird will have the widest turn here, but they have such a lead that it may not matter. Here he comes into the final stretch, and the Firebird is the ultimate champion, never losing a single race in this entire tournament. Finishing with a 12.58. They managed to grab a fastest time again at the last second. The Firebird is the ultimate champion. Congratulations to him. Unfortunately, we didn't have anyone guess that the Firebird would win, but we'll see you in the next tournament.